SK has a second channel called Extra SK, and she apparently uploaded. It says I've watched it, but I didn't watch it. I just clicked on it one time when I was, because I was in her chat and she had it pinned, and I was like, "What's the video?" And she told me she made a whole rant about Lucio, and I was like, "Oh." And so I listened to like 15 seconds, and I was like, "Wait, this is pretty good. Like, can I watch it later?" And she was like, "Yeah, you're good." So yeah, I have a good feeling I know what's gonna be in this, but let go.
If you haven't seen the latest mid-season hotfix, well, they nerfed Lucio's boop by 10%. And while it's disappointing to see, it's also not that big of a deal. I mean, you probably won't even notice it in game. Even so, it highlights a problem with Lucio that I think deserves talking about, and that's how fun he is. In terms of power level, Lucio has always been a good hero in Overwatch 2,
they changed it
and
for
he still
managers? I
is,
didn't know
even
that.
with this nerf. In fact, in the pro scene, he's your acquired pick on certain modes, such as Control, Flashpoint, and Push, simply because of how powerful his speed boost is.
True.
And it's for this reason that he's caught multiple nerfs in the last few seasons. But even though he's always been powerful, for me, he's lost the magic that he used to have.
Oh,
But
no.
why? How? Well, with each patch since Overwatch 2 began, the game has changed around Lucio so much that the so-called best playstyle has kind of been narrowed down to one. Before, there was a lot of freedom in how you chose to play the
Yeah, it was the Reddit Lucio, the Chessmaster Lucio, which is, that one was like more like managing your team. Reddit Lucio obviously going super aggressive, and I thought there was a third one as well. Maybe it was like a hybrid of the two.
character. You could play him extremely passive or extremely aggressive, and everything in between. There was always a way to make it work. And for me, that was where I found all of my enjoyment in the hero, making a really aggressive playstyle.
My playstyle helped teammates when needed, perma aggression when not needed. Also, I love the like very standard text white format from like just like regular OBS or regular editing.
Work in a coordinated environment. No matter how high level I was playing at, even all the way up to tier 1 pros, the best of NA, I always found a way to make this aggression work. But after season 9 and
True, everyone remembers the 1v1s in Face It.
even more so in season 10, I feel like I've been forced to kind of just stand there. The only success I've managed to find in
the
these pro
tank treatment.
matches and really high elo ranked is with this ultra passive playstyle where you stand next to your teammates for the entire game, farm B.
What does this sound like? This sounds like tank until this previous patch, obviously, but this sounds like tank until it got giga buffed. Sound familiar?
As fast as possible and poke the enemies from really far away. And of course, there are exceptions to this. Frogger is a really good example. He takes aggression to the max and literally flanks on the hero and causes distractions in their backline in order to win. But for me, I've never been able to do this without feeling guilty. It feels really bad for your team to die to something that you might have lived had your Lucio been there. And then when you spectate him and he's in Narnia, you get even angrier, even if it's working. So it's not a playstyle that's for me. But I hate that I'm forced to choose between ultra aggressive flanker or really passive, basically a Torbjorn turret.
Gone.
But why do I feel forced into this? Well, there's a lot of
before SK even says anything, I agree. And there's actually a lot of heroes in Overwatch that have this. I'll just say it. I've said it before. I've never like made a video about it, but the reason why I don't play Ryan anymore very much is because I think Ryan's boring as fuck. And you actually see a lot of like newer, like new gen Overwatch players always be like, "Why do people like Ryan? He's so boring." I actually agree. I actually think Ryan's so boring now. All the nuances of the character used to have, the battles, the mind games, all of those can be absolutely wiped out by like multiple characters. Like Kiri with Suzu, obviously that got changed recently, but your support picks with a Lucio or not Lucio, having a Mei and not having a Mei, all those intricacies can be like wiped away. To the point where you could be dominating somebody, they make a couple swaps, and all of a sudden you start getting rolled. And that is really boring to me. And there's other characters that also that applies to as well. And it's one of my biggest complaints of the 5v5 format, where every tank kind of started to feel the same. Where in Overwatch 1, you'd pick different tanks to have different playstyles, right? You pick Ball to be like hyper flank, hyper aggressive. You'd pick Hog to either be annoying on the flank or be solo tanking because you had a Ball, or a Sigma, right? It's the Sigma Hog where Sigma's kind of like all by himself on an island and the Hog's like flanking, going for kills. Or with the double shield Orisa, you know you're playing bunker, you're playing together, you're playing like with cooldown alignments of pull, rock, you're pulling shielding, shield, pull, suck, fortify, and you'd like interchange with each other, and like the synergy that people talk about. Winston D.Va like go hyper aggressive, or the whole Ryan Zarya where it's like you're playing both aggressive and slow at the same time, but depending on the map, it would work really well. A lot of that stuff got phased out, and it just became everyone does the same thing, where it's like you either stand there and poke and do nothing, you either jump in and die, or you play this like weird hybrid where you're like kind of fast, but you're not that fast, but you're mobile enough to play rush, where like now you're talking like Mauga, you're talking Ryan of today, Zarya of today, where it's like you're not playing full rush, but you're playing like poke rush, and it's just kind of boring. And I feel like a lot of characters have fallen into that trap now, so I actually completely agree with it.
Let's talk about
intricacy. Feels gone. And I'll take it one step further. Someone like Hog's rework, even though wasn't bad, removed counterplay and just made the character just like a really dumb, you can't do anything about it. Like it's either going to be super powerful or super weak, and it's like before you could pressure the Hog and then wait for him to go for his E and then sleep him out of his E or CC him out of his E, and that would stun him, and then like all of a sudden now he's in a bad spot. But now you stun him and then he just does it again, and then just does it again, and then just does it again. And it simplified the game in a lot of ways.
Boop first. When Overwatch 2 came out, Lucio boop didn't get directly nerfed, but directional input from the person being booped got buffed a lot, which made boop much worse.
That's true too.
If a person is holding a movement key in the opposite direction that you're booping them, they'll barely move.
Yep.
But if they're holding a key in the same direction, they move a lot. Even so, they're able to move again really quickly after you put them into the air with boop. So quickly that even if you catch someone off guard with it, meaning they're pressing the wrong movement key when they get booped, they can easily correct it and barely move. It got a lot better in the Season 9 patch, which increased Lucio's boop distance and also increased the amount of time that the person getting booped could not press a button.
So that thing right there that Eskay just said, like you can't press a button, that lockout is, in my opinion, the reason why Lucio boop is overtuned. But the reason why they overtuned it is because of the other stuff she talked about. So it's like we solved the problem. The base of the problem was two things. One, passives, so like you can't boof tanks, which is fine. Like, I think that's probably needed. But two was like the directional input is really strong, so like boop really wasn't working very well. So instead of fixing the directional input, they made boop stronger. And so then they had to make the tank passive stronger to counteract that. And so it's like we created a problem, then solved the problem, but it also creates another problem instead of solving the original problem, if that makes sense. So like boop was overtuned, but like it was necessary.
But even so, it's not what it used to be. And I think that's fine. It was a little too good in Overwatch 1, but combined with all the other things I'm about to say, it just, I don't know, it all adds up. Also, a fun little stat, I have 6 hours played on Lucio this season, and I've managed to get 2 environmental kills. This 10% Lucio boop knockback nerf really bothered me. I mean, Lucio boop and its counterplay has a lot of depth to it, and I find joy in that depth. It's high risk for the Lucio player, because they have to be really close to you in order to boop you. There's also direct counterplay. First, in which button you're pressing when you get booped. Second, in which position you're playing. And third, pretty much every single hero has a movement ability that just straight up undoes boop. And as
how many players do you think are actually doing that counterplay of the directional input consciously? Or are they like, oh my god, there's a Lucio running towards me, I'm going to walk at him so hopefully get away from the ledge as far as possible?
Lucio, there are options you have to counter all 3 of these things.
I feel like the average player doesn't even know that's a thing.
I think it's really cool, and it's a big part of the magic of Lucio. But the more it gets nerfed, the less options you have to deal with that counterplay. There's so many cool wall riding plays that I used to go for that I just don't do anymore, because it almost always ends in no reward and with me dead. And I understand the sentiment of nerfing Lucio boop.
Sounds like
having
tank.
your character moved by someone else isn't fun. But I don't think there's been a time where I died to Lucio boop where I didn't feel like I messed up really hard. And most of the time I die, it's because their Lucio did some really cool wall riding rollout thing that has a lot of skill expression and is awesome, and I mean, like, they worked hard for the kill and I messed up. You know what I mean? It's not like I accidentally peeked for half a second and got one shot by something that someone didn't even mean to shoot. Also, when I say that most heroes have movement options against Boop, I really mean it. Tank passive makes Boop barely move them, and there's only 4 DPS out of 18 that don't have a movement ability that directly undoes the Boop. There's also only 4 supports that can't just jump onto the map again after you've booped them. Which leads me into movement creep.
Very weirdly, I know SK, like, I know every player improves over time, but, like, I'm not even trying to flame, but
there's only
SK misses so many shots here that in Overwatch 2, I feel like she hits all of them. I know they increased the projectile size, but is it really that big of a difference
DPS
nowadays that you hit that many more shots now?
18.
Because, like, I'm not even trying to flame. It's just something I noticed. Like, we were watching SK's gameplay before. She was hitting, like, almost every left click. And now, and, like, in this clip, there's so many shots that are missed. Yeah, you could say, obviously she's better now. Like, obviously. I'm not saying, like, I'm not even trying to flame. It's more of, like, I know the projectile size has changed, but is there also maybe something engine-wise that changed that just made it so, like, I don't know, hitting shots felt cleaner or felt easier? But it's like in this, it felt a lot harder.
Directly undoes the Boop. There's
I don't
also
know.
only
I just something
4 supports
my
that
brain
can't just jump onto the map again
onto. It was like, huh?
Them, which
That's
leads
strange.
me into movement creep. With each up,
I mean, but also SK was extremely good at this time too. So like everyone gets better over time. I get that, but it's just like one of those things that
more and more heroes have been given movement abilities.
Drastic change, and this is still a tier 1 like
them
game.
Get out of jail free cards. Hanzo, for example, got his double jump. Reaper TP got buffed so he can use it while falling off the map. Cassidy can just roll in the air, and there hasn't been a
because like these are really good players. Like I'm looking up here and I see Ace of
single
Spades.
new Overwatch 2 hero that doesn't have an ability or multiple that undoes Boop. There are also other Boops in the game that I think are much more egregious, so I don't understand why Lucio Boop would get nerfed, but they don't. I mean, Pharah, for example, her knockback is further than Lucio's, has no risk because it's a traveling projectile, and is much easier to hit thanks to the latest patch that buffed the range the projectile affects people. Let's talk about tank passive. With 50% knockback reduction, Lucio Boop is barely worth going for on them, especially with how threatening they are now. Getting in close enough to boop them is incredibly high risk.
So, I don't know if SK knows, she might correct herself later, but they put it down to 40 at the same time they did the Lucio boop. So like the way I think it was done was they 10% nerf to Lucio's boop, but also 10% nerf to the tank passive, so your tanks are still affected by boop about the same way. That makes sense?
And can easily cost you your life. Going for a boop on a tank to push them further into my team used to be the kind of boop that I would go for the most, but now I almost never go for it. So, with stronger directional input and tons of movement options, the only real way to get boops anymore as Lucio is to catch people off guard. But Lucio's skates are the loudest footstep in the game. You can hear him wall riding in the skybox of Nepal Sanctum all the way down from the point. And I never understood why this is. I've heard that the game philosophy around how loud footsteps are based on how dangerous the hero is, but even Roadhog is quieter than Lucio. There's also heroes like Echo and Pharah that are much quieter, almost silent in the air, and much more dangerous, with the potential to even one-shot you with Echo combo or Pharah barrage. It's so difficult to get the drop on someone, even if it's from the flank or from the skybox where nobody's looking. But that's just boop. I mean, I can deal with it. Like, I've dealt with it for all of Overwatch 2. You can still have a lot of fun on Lucio. The problem is everything else that it's stacked up with. Let's talk about HP changes. Season 9 came with increased HP for every hero in the game, as well.
And I liked Season 9 in the beginning. But after, I think I literally called it to a f***ing T that it's going to be really fun for about a month. And then after about a month, everyone's going to start to see the flaws. And within 2 to 3 months, everyone's going to hate it and want to go back. And that's exactly what happened.
As increased projectile size hitboxes, making everything easier to hit. And 250 HP is the biggest reason for this playstyle change that I'm talking about. The way that Lucio got kills before was surprise burst damage. It was really rare for him to win a duel against a DPS or a DPS support if he engaged and they were ready. But if you snuck up on them, or outplayed them in some way and managed to hit a few shots before they were ready, hitting 4 headshots, booping them, and then hitting mostly body with another 4 and a melee to finish would give you a really good chance at winning that duel. It's not enough anymore. With 250 HP, you have to hit an extra 4 bullets to kill, and in that time, you're most likely dead. Don't even get me started on how hard it is to hit 12 bullets on someone. I mean, Lucio's projectile moves so slowly. Also, the additional time it takes to kill someone gives the other team supports a chance to react and pump the target you're shooting at full of healing. You have to be godlike and extremely consistent to win duels now. And even with however many hours I have on this goofy character and really strong mechanics, I cannot consistently pull something off like that. And because of how low my chances are at winning a duel now, I never go for them outside of a Hail Mary play in a really lost team fight where we need a kill. And maybe I'm being...
That is kind of sad, because I do feel that with other heroes too. It feels like some depth has been lost. But obviously, you always got to sit there and question yourself, and you're like, dude, am I just getting old? Am I being an old boomer and like, oh, back in my day? But I also don't believe in extreme coincidences. You know, like I feel like everyone feels the same way on something. There's no, like, that's how it is, right? Like, it's not, we're not gaslighting ourselves. Like, we're not crazy, right? Like, if most people that are talking about it, and most people that are like, we're all on the same level, right? Like, we've all kind of agreed with stuff over the years, like with some differences. Like, not everyone's going to always agree, but like overall, we're pretty close, right? On a lot of things. And then everyone starts shifting in the same direction together. And all of us are like, yeah, I don't know about this anymore. Like, I don't really like this that much anymore. I'm not having that much fun. Oh, I feel like this is not that great for this character. Well, that's weird. I feel like this is not great for this character either. And it's like, especially people that have like specialties in certain areas, there's no way we're all crazy, right? There has to be some smidge of truth. And how do you convey that? Like, I remember when Overwatch 2 released, I was annoyed with Rhinepin, and I felt like it didn't behave the same way as it did in Overwatch 1, and I complained about it. But I got asked, so like, what's different? I go, it just doesn't pin the same way. They were like, how? I was like, well, like, sometimes I hit things and I go through like butter, and sometimes I hit things and I hit things that I shouldn't have. And they're like, well, that's kind of how pin always has been. And I was like, yeah, but it's not the same way. And now it just feels like it doesn't hit anything at all. But yeah, it's so hard to convey like why something doesn't feel right sometimes.
Spoiled in thinking that Lucio should be able to 1v1 a DPS or a BAP on a Zen or Lari. But I always thought that that was the coolest part of him. It was the part I had the most fun with. I mean, his shots are so difficult to hit, especially when you combine them with how fast you're moving when you're wall riding. And you also had to carefully pick and choose the situations that you would go for these duels. It came with incredible risk as well, because in order to effectively duel someone with your really slow projectiles, you have to be right next to them, which often means being close to their whole team and being susceptible to close range abilities like cast, flashbang, and tracer pulls. It's high risk, high reward for outplaying your opponent and also having incredibly good mechanics. But now it feels like even if I've outplayed them, unless I'm Funny Astro, the goat of Lucio, I always lose. Another reason that these duels are so hard to take now is because of how much more consistent the other person is at hitting me. With the Season 9 hitbox changes, even with really strong movement, Grandmaster and Champ players with
this is why I was talking about earlier when I talked about looking at SK's scrim footage here. Yeah, I know so many old names in the scrim bot. I'm feeling very nostalgic as well, Ruben. I was like, you know, nothing against SK, and some people are like, oh, you're flaming SK. I'm really not. But like, she's hitting so many less shots here.
Incredible aim will rarely ever miss on a Lucio close up, right? Which is the range you have to beat to duel someone. And this might be a skill issue on my part, but on Lucio, the hitbox changes never increased my accuracy. For every season in Overwatch 2, it's always been between 20 and 25%, and in Season 9 and 10, it's still below 25. I think that's because of how hard the projectile already is to hit, or maybe I just got worse aim. I don't know. Maybe it is a skill issue, but guys, if I'm top 20 and I'm suffering from skill issue, what about everyone else?
That's a fair point.
And don't even get me started on Tracer. The Lucio-Tracer interaction has always been really, really cool to me, until Season 9. It's Lucio's job to protect your team from Tracer.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back and find an old CarQ video of tips for Lucio or tips for Tracer, actually. And I'm pretty sure back in the day, the idea was Tracer doesn't even fight Lucio because you're not winning that 1v1.
Especially your other support, and you do that
What
by
does SK
fighting
say,
her.
though?
When she had 150 HP, it was possible to quadruple headshot boop insta-kill her. So if you managed to catch her off guard and hit some insane
I gotta go find an old CarQ video. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy.
shots, you could outplay and kill even an incredibly skilled Tracer player. They had to respect you at least a little bit and be careful about the way that they fight you because of this potential burst.
I'm doing it now.
So if the Tracer ever overcommits and starts losing, you could chase her down and maybe get the kill. But now with her new pulse pistols having more damage and a larger hitbox, it's really difficult to fight her close range. The exceptionally good Tracer players, no matter how good your movement, will burst you down in one clip. And it really didn't used to be like this. Maybe the Tracer players have just gotten way better, but I don't know. With how many shots you have to hit on the Tracer and the inability to surprise her and kill her before her recall, dueling Tracer is pretty much impossible now. It's just a cycle of shooting her enough to force her recall, and then her waiting for her recall to come up, and then coming back in, and then shooting her until you force a recall. It's boring. It's boring. So now, because I can't really go for aggressive duels against the other team and booping tanks, the thing that I would go for the most is not as viable anymore. The best low
boop, that went so far.
Is to just stand with my team.
Hang on, what the was that? Did you guys, dude? That was crazy. That was a brig getting booped off the map.
It's boring.
In real footage,
I can't
not
really
fake,
go for
not
aggressive
AI.
duels against the
Look at this.
other team and booping tanks. The thing that I would go for the most is not as viable.
Look at that! Holy Jesus Christ! That went like 10 miles. That's wild.
Anymore. The best low risk
option
is to just stand with my team and farm B as fast as possible. And honestly, this was kind of fine before because when they had a Tracer, at least I could, you know, participate in fighting against her. Like, it was fun, even if I had to stand next to my teammates and just protect them. And it still is sometimes if they're playing like Winston and I have to do crazy boops, keep them alive and also shoot the Tracer out. I mean, Lucio still
damn, thank you so much for 5,000 bits. I appreciate
has some enjoyment. Okay, let's talk about the Season 10 tank buffs. Because of how powerful tanks are, if I so much as take my eyes off of my other support or my hit scan, who don't really have movement abilities to get away from a tank,
thanks so much,
they will literally get insta-killed. Like, they need my speed boost and they need me to boop their tank away in order to survive the tank, even looking at them. So I'm kind of on babysit duty. But even if it wasn't like that, I mean, I'm already standing with my team because of all the other things. So, you know, while I'm here, I guess. Let's talk about impact on the game.
That's funny.
I feel like all sense of
I love the realizations like, yeah, I mean, I guess I could do it because I'm stuck here anyways.
agency has been taken away from me. I am a glorified Torbjorn turret. I've spent thousands of hours perfecting my craft on Lucio, sharpening my wall riding and aim mechanics, and I can't use it anymore. My job, especially in pro play, is to stand next to my support in my hit scan and shoot my slow projectiles at people who are way too far away for me to actually aim. I don't even get the fun of trying to hit crazy shots or having the chance of killing someone at long range. The best thing I can do is spam a corner that they might be standing in. I'm literally spectating. If someone gets close, I boop them. If their team pushes or we want to push, I speed amp. But like, who can't do that? How am I supposed to establish a difference between myself and their Lucio? I used to at least have a bit of fun protecting my teammates if I had a Tracer to fight, but now, even if there's a Tracer, I know I can't win. I have to play scared, sitting next to my other support and pepper her from far away. Even if I force her recall, going in and trying to hunt her down is still a disadvantageous fight for me. I can't find any joy in this hero anymore.
Yeah, when your entire purpose is for just speed and that's it. Like, you see people, I already see people arguing. It's like, well, Lucio's been meta for so long. Yeah, but do you understand why Lucio's meta? Lucio's meta because he's the only character that provides speed to everybody on the entire team. The only other one that does that is Junker Queen, and it's on a 12-second cooldown, which you don't use for that. You use it for yourself. Speed in Overwatch means a lot because it allows you to readjust and to take fights faster and to readjust faster mid-fight. Positioning is everything in Overwatch. That's why you don't see the people that have hardcore rage hacks who are terrible at the game get past gold, because they suck and they can't do anything. They lose to tanks and they lose to these people that actually have somewhat of a skill of understanding how positioning works in Overwatch. They legitimately can't climb. That should be your proof. And Lucio is a good example of literally just enabling everybody else to play the game. And so when SK says that she feels like a Torbjorn turret and a spectator, she's kind of right. It doesn't matter if it's meta or not, because she's not doing anything. Like, she's just standing there, just shooting at their tank, building beat, and then pressing Q to save somebody or save the team on an ult. And that's it. There's nothing else. There's no skill expression with wall riding. If you guys don't remember, Lucio back in the day, like old Overwatch, we're talking 2016 Overwatch, actually healed people through LOS. So you could wall ride up at the top of the mountain on Route 66 and still heal people. The idea behind that was that way you can still heal your team while also wall riding and still using like his cool abilities. Obviously that was a little too much, so it became like more of an AoE, and then it became smaller over time too, because they wanted to let people have that skill expression and have the ability to wall ride and do all that kind of stuff. But now, honestly, how many times do you even need to like wall ride unless it's just like mid-fight, just trying to be something harder to hit, right? Like, there's not really many aggressive flanks. Like, if your team is taking high ground Eichenwald on a Rhine comp, you're not wall riding up the Eichenwald tower to go up there and boop somebody and do damage. You're probably speeding them under the mega and then up the stairs and up with them, because you're basically a speed bot. That's what you're there for. So you can't go on flanks. You can't do all these things unless you're literally abandoning your team, which is what SK talks about in the beginning, is like the Frogger playstyle, which is fine. Like, you know, go off, have a good time. But obviously you're not helping your team at that point. So what she's saying is legitimately all true, whether you like Lucio or not, and should be taken seriously and is valid. Doesn't matter if your favorite hero is Zenyatta and hasn't been meta the entire time. Like, but like the point is, even though Lucio is a good pick, first off, most ranks people don't even know how to play with Lucio. To be fair, they just sit there on heal aura, and two, you're just spectating. So like, I get it. I think she's right, and it doesn't matter if it's strong or not. Like,
Every game in ranked,
a hero over like in perspective of the rest of the roster, it's not fun. And if you're sucking the fun out of something, people aren't going to want to play it. And if people don't want to play it, you see the problem?
I can't find any joy in this hero anymore. Every game in ranked feels like a coin toss. I mean, people who have 10 hours on Lucio have the same impact that I do. It doesn't feel like a competition, and I play this game because I'm competitive. I have so much more fun playing DPS or the other supports now, because I actually get to feel like I'm participating. On Ana, Zen, Bap, or Ilari, I get to, you know, do stuff. I can hit crazy skill shots. I can keep my team alive through things somebody else might not be able to keep them alive through. I get to react to things. There's always potential to have impact by playing really well or making an insane play. And on Lucio, it feels like I just don't have that anymore. I'm really sad, and watching back old Lucio gameplay makes me even more sad.
Welcome to the feeling tanks have the past 10 seasons, SK. I think you're right. But you know how much it blowed? We all hate it, right? We all hate it. It was ass. So why make somebody else go through it too? If you hear a lot she's saying, you probably feel like that on tank. And I think tank players know the most. That's not good, and it shouldn't be that way.
I really miss what he used to be. And I want to reiterate, Lucio is not a bad hero by any means. It's actually the opposite. So I agree that he needs nerfs. No hero should be a must-pick on more maps than one, and Lucio is a must-pick on 3 different game modes. But nerfing his individual gameplay, his sense of agency, everything that makes him fun is not the direction that we need to go in. It actually doesn't even fix the problem that we're trying to address. The problem has always been his team speed boost, and no matter how bad individually Lucio is, his team speed boost and his really good ultimate will make him a required pick on maps where speed boost matters a lot. I think I'd like to see how a nerf to his team speed boost and a buff to his individual power would work out. Maybe that's the solution that we need, but either way, I don't know.
I think that would probably kill the character.
A lot of this stuff isn't even the nerfs that have happened to Lucio. Like 20 damage to 18 damage on his projectile isn't that much. And the armor changes on tanks, I mean, whatever. You couldn't do damage to tanks anyways. The Lucio knockback nerf, whatever. I think the biggest problem is how the game has changed around him. Like, even without the nerfs, you would probably still be forced into this playstyle. So how do you even fix that? I don't know. But I hope this video helps in some way. And if you're feeling the same way I do, let me know in the comments. Maybe someone has a solution that I can't think of. Until next time.
Aw. I mean, she's right. She's right. No, don't say Lucio rework. I think we've hit the point of no return. I think we've got too many reworks at this point.
I have an honest question. Should high skill characters like Doom, Genji, and Lucio be nerfed because they are a high skill character that has a high skill cap, so that everyone can play the character and not make them oppressively good because of the skill level?
That's how we get the problem we have today. Of like, you make every character a copy and paste of the same character. Boring. Nobody wants to play that. When people say the soul is taken out of Overwatch, like years ago, people used to say that, like, oh, the soul is gone from Overwatch. Loot boxes. Shut up. Wasn't the loot boxes. I promise you that. Stuff like this is what breaks the soul out little by little. And it chips away, and you don't notice it until, like, too much gets chipped away. And I think we're hitting the point where too much has gotten chipped away over time. So, I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, I feel it for you, SK. I feel it for you.